You're listening to Himalayan Adventure by Vaile. Chapter 12.
When Zaw saw the traffic jam on the mountain road, he sat up straight in the driver's seat and put both of his furry hands on the steering wheel. "Uh-oh, this doesn't look good," he muttered. His sister was asleep in the passenger seat, and he nudged her with his elbow. Jerking upright, she yawned, rubbed her eyes, and asked, "Are we there yet?" "Not yet," Zaw replied. "Check out what's up ahead." Abby's sleepy expression disappeared when she saw the traffic jam. "What the?" she mumbled. "I'm going to have to stop the car, I've got no choice," he said. "Just don't stop too close to the car in front or they might see us," she replied with a touch of panic in her voice. "Yeah, but I can't stop too far back either," he stated. "That might attract some attention as well." Zod gently brought the car to a halt about 10 meters from the vehicle in front. It was a truck, fully loaded with large crates, and the driver's vision of what was behind him was limited. After Zaw switched off the headlights and the engine, he settled back in his seat and waited, watching carefully. The interior of the little white car was dark, and with their hoods over their faces, they were concealed from casual glances, but if somebody stared in through the windows, there could be problems. When he agreed to follow Pemba's bus to Shabrubesi, he never thought he would get caught in a traffic jam, and now that he was stuck here, he had no idea what to do next. 10 minutes passed and the traffic didn't move. Whatever was going on up ahead was definitely more than a learner driver clumsily attempting a three-point turn. Zaw began to suspect that they were in for a long wait, and with every passing minute, the chances of them being noticed by some curious stranger went up. He didn't want to spend the whole night waiting there because in the end, some sticky beak would press his face against the window and ask if everything was okay, and then the game would be up. Adjusting the rearview mirror, he watched the traffic build up behind his car. Soon, the number of vehicles back there stretched around the gentle bend in the road and out of sight. Not good at all. There were humans all around, and in a worst-case scenario, the only way for he and his sister to escape would be to go down the mountain on foot. There was no question that he and Abby could handle the trek. After all, accessing Shangri-La through any one of its numerous secret entrances required superhuman prowess, and they did that on a regular basis, but it would slow them down on the way to Shabrubesi and put them further behind Pemba's bus. The whole idea had been to stay with Pemba, not get stuck on the mountain and arrive in Shabrubesi a day later. Then it occurred to him that perhaps Pemba's bus was also stuck in the traffic jam, and just as he was considering whether to sneak up ahead to find out, he saw, in his rearview mirror, several people walking along the line of traffic and heading for his car. "Keep your head down," he said calmly. 3 people are coming past on your side." Abby slid down in her seat a little and pulled her jacket hood further over her furry face. As the Nepalese walked past the little white car, Abby watched them intently with her huge blue yeti eyes. She breathed a small sigh of relief, but then Zaw whispered that more people were coming, lots more, a steady stream of black silhouettes moving up both sides of the road on either side of the car. "They must be going to see what is causing all this," Abby said. "I'm half considering going myself," Zaw muttered. Abby stared at her brother in the darkness of the car and said, "Are you crazy?" Zaw shrugged. "We can't wait here forever," he replied. "It's not going to be forever," Abby said. "Let's just wait here, and when the traffic starts to move, we'll just move right along with it." Zaw was silent for a while, and his sister mistakenly believed that he agreed with her plan. Neither of them spoke, and they watched to see what would happen. The flow of silhouettes moving past the car stopped, and after a while people started returning, walking slowly down the road. Zaw's sharp eyes discerned the movement of their lips long before he could hear what they were saying, and he wound down his window a few centimeters. "What are you doing?" hissed Abby. "I want to hear what they're saying," Zaw said. "Wind your window back up," she repeated. But he refused to do so, and Abby knew there was no point getting angry because her headstrong brother never did what she told him to do anyway. Zaw listened carefully, and he picked out just enough from the passing conversation to understand what had caused the traffic jam. "I think it's a landslide," he said when the people were past the back of the car. "A landslide," she groaned. "That'll take days to clear. I'm gonna go up ahead and check it out," he declared. "What?" she exclaimed. "Have you been paying attention to how many humans have been heading up that way? One of us has to do it," he explained. "We need to know how big the landslide is, and we need to know if Pemba's bus is caught in this traffic jam or made it through." It didn't occur to either of these two otherwise very intelligent yetis that there was a third possibility, but getting trapped in a bus in a landslide was not exactly an everyday occurrence. "Even in Nepal." "Yeah, I agree with all that stuff," Abby said, but like I said, have you noticed how many humans have been heading up that way? Don't worry, I'll stay out of the light, Zaw said. Anyway, everybody will be interested in the landslide, so they won't pay any attention to me. I hope so, because if you get caught, I'll be on my own here, Abby answered. Zaw grinned and said, so you're not really worried about me, just yourself? You know what I mean, she shot back. I'm touched, sis, he said. I never knew you cared. Well, now you know, she replied, more harshly than she intended. Then her voice softened and she added, just promise me you'll come back as quickly as you can and not do anything dumb. Zaw feigned ignorance. Like what? He asked innocently. Abby sighed. Like all the dumb stuff you always do, she said. Zaw checked all around the car and then got out when there was nobody around. As soon as the door was closed, Abby locked it. It was easy for Zaw to stay out of the light as he made his way along the road. Most drivers had switched off their headlights to conserve their vehicles' batteries. A few people standing around had torches, but nobody paid any attention to the lone person wearing the red jacket making his way up the road. The night sky was a brilliant display of constellations of the northern hemisphere, but the stars were not as bright compared to the view from Zaw's home in Shangri-La, which was at a higher and far more private elevation than the mountain road. As he made his way along the line of traffic, he watched for Pemba's bus but didn't see it. Around the bend, and the little white car with his sister inside was out of sight, and still no sign of Pemba's bus. So Pemba made it through, Zaw thought. Pemba's probably in Shabrubesi by now, and thanks to his brilliant plan to join Burnmaster's group, he got a bus ride there, and we're going to have to climb over this landslide and walk the rest of the way. Terrific. He was still muttering to himself when the landslide came into view. Standing back with his hands on his hips, he sized up the wall of mud, tree trunks and boulders and muttered some more. He had seen quite a few avalanches in his young life, but they were always avalanches of snow in the mountain regions around Shangri-La. He had never seen a landslide like this and wondered if he and Abby would be able to safely climb over it. After a bit more reconnaissance, he decided they could. There were boulders and tree trunks they could use to cross over the top, like stepping stones over a pond. And if Abby didn't want to do that, they could always climb down the mountain and make their way around the landslide. He peered over the edge of the precipice and into the dark valley below. It would be a pain if they had to go that way because it would take so much longer, but at least they had options. Their number one priority now was to catch up with Pemba's bus. He hurried back to the car and rapped on the window. Abby let him in and he explained what he had seen. She was less than happy about their predicament, but agreed that they would never catch up with Pemba by sitting there in the car and waiting for the landslide to disappear. So do we have to ditch this car? She asked. There's nothing we can do about that, he replied. The Shangri-La Council will understand. And we have to walk the rest of the way to Shabrubesi, she continued. If there are cars trapped on the other side of the landslide, maybe one of them will give us a lift the rest of the way, joked Zaw. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be happy to give us a lift, replied Abby, right to the nearest zoo. Zaw was stuffing his jacket pockets with as many chocolates and chip packets as he could fit inside. Come on, it'll be easy, he said. We've got plenty of food to make the journey, so stop complaining. How come you're so pumped about this? She asked. A few days ago at the airport, you couldn't stop crowing about how stupid this mission is. True, Zaw said, zipping up his bulging jacket pockets. But things have gotten more interesting since then, and Pemba's not around giving me orders. Abby's crystal blue eyes narrowed suspiciously as she looked at her brother. It wouldn't have something to do with the fact that there are 3 young adults traveling with Burnmaster, would it? She mused. Zaw feigned innocence. What makes you think I care anything about them? He asked lightly. Because I know how you like to break the rules, she answered, and that includes talking to people you shouldn't be talking to. Zaw was a pretty good liar, but not to his sister. I don't want to talk to them, he said unconvincingly. Abby watched her brother carefully. Yes, you do, she said flatly. They come from another part of the world and you want to see what they're like, right? Maybe, he replied with a shrug. But I'm never gonna get the chance, so what are you worried about? Nothing, she said, provided you never get the chance. Have you got enough food for both of us? Zaw pushed a handful of chocolate bars into her open palm with more force than was necessary, and she shoved them into her jacket pocket and zipped it tight. Then she clapped her hands together loudly and declared, All right, let's do this. You're a lot more pumped about this hike than you were a few minutes ago, Zaw grunted, mimicking his sister's voice. That's because I know that if I let you go alone, you're just going to find an opportunity to talk to Burnmaster's companions, so I had better keep an eye on you. You're not my babysitter, Zaw muttered. They left the car and made their way along the side of the road, keeping their jacket hoods pulled low over their faces, moving the way humans move, and staying away from any headlights as much as possible. Neither of them noticed the large bus bound for Shabrubesi pull up some distance behind their little white car, at the end of the queue of traffic that stretched down the mountain road. When they arrived at the landslide, they decided to try and climb over the top. There were plenty of tree trunks and boulders to support their weight, and yetis were expert climbers. From their vantage point on the mountain road, it was impossible to determine how wide the landslide was, but Abby figured it couldn't be more than 20 or 30 meters. After scaling the wall of mud and debris in the darkness, she stood balancing on a tree trunk at the top of the landslide, and by the faint silver light from the crescent moon in the night sky, judged her guess to be more or less accurate. With the sure-footedness of mountain goats, the two yetis bounded from tree trunk to tree trunk over the sea of mud and quickly covered the distance to the far side of the landslide. Down on the mountain road, a group of Nepalese men stood near the headlights of a car, cursing their misfortune to have been trapped on the Kathmandu side of the landslide. Then one sharp-sighted man, the youngest in the group, noticed two shadowy figures clamber up the side of the landslide. "Did you see that?" he exclaimed, the cigarette hanging limply from his lips as he spoke. Two people just climbed up the landslide and disappeared over the top. Several men stared in the direction he was pointing but saw nothing. There were a few muttered comments before an older, wiser man spoke up. "Impossible," he declared. "Nobody would be silly enough to cross a landslide on foot. The whole thing could go over the edge of the mountain at any moment." "That's right," another man added, his hair also grayed by age and experience. "They'd have to be monkeys to make it to the other side." His wisecrack produced guffaws of laughter from several of the men, and the younger man was unable to convince his companions of what he had seen. At the other side of the landslide, Zaw and Abby lay flat on their stomachs and peered over the edge. They weren't concerned about the climb down. Challenging it may have been for a human, but they could do it blindfolded and with both hands tied behind their backs. Abby counted a dozen cars and 2 trucks, not quite as busy as on the other side, she whispered, and less headlights, too, Zaw agreed. Right now, darkness was their only ally. Provided we move quickly, we should be fine, he said. "I can't see Pemba's bus," Abby noted, glancing around the area. "No, he must be on his way to Shabrubesi," Zaw replied. To the right, there were several men digging at the edge of the landslide with shovels. Illuminated by the headlights of a nearby car, they seemed to be digging at the night itself. Zaw watched them for a while and wondered why they were even bothering. At the rate they were going, it would take all year before they had cut a channel through the mud. He shook his head. "Sometimes humans did the strangest things. What do you think that's all about?" he whispered. Abby already had 1 foot over the side. "Let's not stick around to find out." He watched her negotiate a speedy path down the side of the landslide and hurried after her, his clawed hands effortlessly gripping the tree trunks as he went. By the time his feet touched the ground, his sister was already a dozen steps ahead of him on the mountain road. He paused to watch the Nepalese men digging at the landslide. They were busy with their task and gave no indication of noticing his or his sister's sudden appearance. So far so good, he thought. Now, if only Abby would slow down so I can catch up. As he turned to leave, he heard a snatch of conversation from the men that caused him to pause mid-step. Edging closer to the group, he listened carefully. Then the icy fingers of fear squeezed his yeti heart and his breath caught in his chest. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, but the men seemed certain. A bus was trapped under the landslide. The men were not trying to make a path through. They were digging to save the bus. The thought that it could be Pemba's bus under the landslide rocked Zaw back on his heels, and he tried to think of any reason why it couldn't be so. Any reason would do. He racked his brain, but nothing came to mind. Whichever way he twisted it, there was every possibility that his best human friend, heck, his best friend whether yeti or human, was trapped under the landslide and fighting for his life. All his earlier thoughts about Pemba getting an easy run to Shabrubesi suddenly evaporated. He sprinted down the road after his sister and roughly guided her into the darkest spot he could find. "What are you doing?" she hissed, pulling her arm from his grasp. "I think Pemba's bus might be trapped under the landslide," he whispered. "What?" she replied, her blue eyes searching his face for any indication that her rascally brother was making a bad joke. "That's ridiculous," Zaw shook his head and said. "The humans back there are talking about a bus under the landslide, and seeing as Pemba's bus isn't around here." He left the rest of that sentence unsaid. "So why don't you call him and find out?" Abby asked. Of course, he'd forgotten all about his satellite phone. Hurriedly pulling it from his pocket, he selected Pemba's number with one clawed finger and waited for it to dial. Abby nervously chewed on her index finger claw and waited to see what happened. Zaw heard the call connect and he opened his mouth to speak, but then he heard Pemba's recorded message and realized he had been put through to an answering service. He glanced at his sister and shook his head woodenly. "Try again," she said quietly. He did, but got the same result. With a sigh, he left a quick message asking Pemba to call him as soon as possible if he wasn't trapped under a landslide. Abby rubbed her temples, trying to ward off a headache. "Let's just take a minute to think this through carefully," she said. Zaw absently stared at the bright display on his sat phone. "Okay," he replied. "We know Pemba is on a bus, and we know a bus is trapped under the landslide," she said. Zaw was about to say that he wasn't absolutely sure a bus was trapped under the landslide because he hadn't actually seen the bus, but then decided not to interrupt his sister's train of thought, just in case she was onto something. "Right," he said. "We're not sure if it's Pemba's bus under the landslide," she continued thoughtfully, "but it might be because we can't reach him on his sat phone." "Aha. On the other hand, the reason we can't reach him on the mobile could be because of the bad reception in this area," she continued. "There must be a lot of places around here with no phone reception, right? Or his phone might be out of power." "True," he agreed. "So when you consider all of that information together, it means," she said. Hopeful, Zaw leaned a fraction closer to his sister. "It means we had better call Dad because I haven't got a clue what to do," she finished. Zaw sighed. "What's Dad gonna do?" he asked. "He's 200 kilometers away. Hopefully he'll give us some good advice," she answered. Zaw dialed his father's number, then glanced at his sister and said, "Marvelous, sis. I thought you were building up to some awesome conclusion." Abby shook her head indignantly. "I was just thinking it through out loud," she shot back. A minute passed, but their father did not answer his phone. Zaw tried again, but still no answer. "I hope this doesn't mean he's trapped under the landslide with Pemba," Zaw muttered. Abby gave her brother a dark look. "That's not funny," she said. "You're right, it's not," he replied, without a trace of humor in his voice. He tiredly ran his furry hand over his face and then said, "I'll ring Pinder." "Pinder," she laughed. "What help is he going to be? All that Yeti knows how to do is play computer games and skip school, because day or night he always answers his phone," Zaw said, as he pressed the green dial button and put the phone to his ear. "So if nothing else, he can spread the word around Shangri-La that Pemba might be in trouble." "Shangri-La's too far away for them to get help to us in time," Abby said. Zaw started to answer his sister, but then the call connected. "Pinder, it's Zaw," he began. "Listen, I've got a problem. Pemba's." There was a pause, followed by, "No, it's Zaw." "That's right. No, I'm not in Kathmandu anymore. Hey, could you turn that music down? I can't hear a word you're saying." Abby thought most of her brother's friends were a bunch of no-hopers, and Pinder was the worst of them. So it was unfortunate that she had to rely upon him now for help. Snatching the phone from her brother, she screamed into the mouthpiece, "Pinder, it's Abby." Then she lowered her voice and continued, "You'd better listen and listen good. First, turn that damn music down. That's better. Now listen up, because Pemba might be in a lot of trouble and we need your help." Pinder's voice had that sleepy quality of a person who is always tired or permanently chilled out. "Pemba's in trouble. What kind of trouble?" he asked. There was no nice way to say it. "He might be trapped in a bus that's under an avalanche," Abby explained. "Are you serious?" Pinder replied. "I was just playing a snowboarding game on the computer, and I got totally wiped out by an avalanche at the exact moment when you called. Talk about a major coincidence. That stuff freaks me out." Abby's hand, which was far stronger than a human's, tightened angrily on the sat phone. "Would you just forget about your computer game and concentrate?" she growled. "Pemba's life may be in danger, and we need you to find our dad or your dad and tell them what I just told you." "You mean about the avalanche?" Pinder said. "I mean about Pemba maybe being trapped in a bus under an avalanche," she snapped. "Oh, yeah, right," replied Pinder. "That sounds pretty bad. Can you just find our dad and tell him?" Abby pressed. Okay, I'm on it," he said. "And what do you want me to say if I see Pemba's dad?" Abby stopped. She hadn't considered that. She didn't want to worry Pemba's dad unnecessarily, but there seemed little choice. "Tell him, too," she said. "And before you go, could you look up the number for the emergency services?" Pinder had to repeat the number 3 times before Abby remembered it. With hardly a goodbye, she disconnected the call and stared at her brother. Both of them knew that the emergency services were a long way away, and contacting them would almost be a waste of time. But it was better than doing nothing at all. Zaw watched in silence as his sister made the call. After a while he said, "Pemba's my best friend, you know." "I know," she said quietly. "I can't just stand here and wait," he whispered. "I know," she replied. "But how are we going to dig without somebody seeing us?" It was clear from her brother's expression that he didn't have an answer to that question.
That is the end of this chapter. To listen to the next chapter on YouTube or to purchase the digital ebook from Amazon, see the links in the description.